What's up, fam? Hey, friends, and welcome back to I Like to Read with me, your host, Rachel Belansky. So we're new to this thing. We're figuring it out. We're adjusting cameras. We're talking too close into the microphone because this is only my third attempt at recording a podcast. And we're here. We're chilling. It's a beautiful day in Los Angeles, California. And we are here to talk about books. Shocker, I know, with the title like I Like to Read. Who would have thought? So if you're new here, I like to read, as the title suggests. Did I say that? I read about one book a day, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. So every week I will be here to bring you the top 5 of the maybe 7, maybe 8, maybe 9 books that I have read that week. Usually there is a variety of stuff. I think today we have a memoir, we have some young adult, we have some fiction, we have some nonfiction. So we got a pretty good mix today. But first, we're going to talk about some nostalgic reads. The books that kind of made me into the reader, human being that I am today. Of course, like I said, I read about one book a day now. So as you can imagine, back in the days of very easy chapter books, picture books, there was sometimes quite a few books a day because I like to read. So the first series that really made me who I am, Arthur, by Mark Brown, The Adventurous Aardvark. Yes, loved the TV show, still do, may or may not watch it occasionally. When I was a youngin', I was only allowed half an hour of TV a day, which in today's terms seems absolutely insane. But I used that half hour to watch Arthur, and I would always be like, is it 4:30? Is it Arthur time or whatever on PBS? But even the book series, something about that guy, he was fun. He was a little bit edgy almost for a young book series. Looking back now, it's really not edgy at all, but I think they were just really adept at the line between children's programming. It's not something like Paw Patrol or whatever. PBS Kids really killed it at their programming, and they killed it because of the book series by Mark Brown. This, I guess, is also kind of a TV and book series nostalgia. But really, the books, there was, all most of the episodes were based on the books, at least at the beginning. And it was just, an aardvark living his life. To be honest, those books, they just really, I'm not gonna lie, they didn't stick with me as much as the TV show. But if it were not for those books, we would not have had the TV show. And the guy's name is Arthur Reed, and he liked to read too. The library was always a big place to him. I know he had his family, like DW and Grandma Thora and Pal and all of them. And all the best parts from the TV show came from that book series. We would not have Arthur the TV show without Mark Brown's illustrious series. So yeah, I don't remember how old I was when I read them. Obviously, they are picture books, so they're a little bit easier to read. I don't think I stayed with reading the books for obvious reasons, but like I said, the television show, always there for me. In no particular order, we have Holes by Louis Sachar, I believe. I wrote down the titles, didn't write down the author names. We're gonna hope that the old noggin can remember them. Okay, Holes, digging up dem holes. Loved the book before the movie. We will get to the movie in a second. But if you are unfamiliar, Holes is about a little guy named Stanley Yelnats. He is comes from a very poor family who are cursed by the elusive Madame Zeroni. Only true fans will get it. True fans are people who've read the book. He is his family's cursed. He ends up being committed for a very small crime, which takes him to a youth camp, sort of outdoors, military outward bound type camp, and they have to just dig holes all day. Turns out that the holes are being dug because there's some long lost treasure hidden in the desert, and the warden wants them to find it. And it's really just, it's a story of some boys being boys, but it's I guess I read it in like 3rd or 4th grade, so I don't exactly know like what age range it was appropriate for, but I think it really established sort of a love for contemporary fiction in the sense that we are taking, in this case, a slightly out of the norm situation, you know, boys in a reform camp digging up holes. But it's kind of a weird everyday type concept, and looking at the weirdness and sort of focusing on the one person, in this case Stanley, you know, following our protagonist as he tries to figure out why he's here, what he's doing, his relationships with the other boys, and his relationship to himself, as well as sort of, in a way, kind of like the prison system. I mean, they're young boys, but there's a little bit of commentary on that. And then, of course, there is the movie that came out featuring Shia LaBeouf, a couple other people, I think. What's his face? John Voight is in that. Maybe Sigourney Weaver. So it's got a pretty good cast. I did watch it in the past couple of years again, and holds up. It really holds up. When the movie came out back in the days, you know, the old days when the movie theater times were printed on the newspapers. I know that obviously I was too young to be getting, but the day I knew it was coming out, my dad had to bring the newspaper, and I had to check the show times, and I was so excited, and I went to the opening premiere, and then I got the soundtrack, and it was stuck with me. I haven't read the book in a very long time. It would be interesting to revisit it. Obviously, it's written for younger readers, but a lot of the concepts still hold up. It would also be interesting to kind of get maybe a sequel, a Where Are They Now, with Zero and Armpit. I don't remember the rest of their names, but Stanley Yelnats. I mean, the name alone, Stanley Yelnats, like, I kind of want to name a cat that. So we got Holes. Then we have The Westing Game. Unfortunately, I don't remember this author. This was another one that I read in that, like, you know, 3rd to 4th grade age range. To be honest, I don't remember much of what The Westing Game is about. I wrote it down, and now I'm kind of sitting here like an idiot. But it was a young adult mystery. I do remember that. Let's quickly cheat and look up The Westing Game. Sound like a real professional. Okay, so it was written by Ellen Raskin. It came out all the way back in 1978. It has to deal with an apartment building. That's right. So something to do with like a fortune in an apartment building and people living in it, and you know, we could read it and refresh ourselves. But also it was a mystery involving a game, so sort of like Clue, I think, but more of a grounded story as opposed to just random players named after colors looking for objects. Although the movie Clue, fantastic, check it out. So The Westing Game, it's fine that I don't remember the details, because I remember I did read this book multiple times. There was definitely like some sort of crappy Disney Channel original movie or something that came out around the 90s. But this really just kind of established the love of mystery and plot twists. Looking back on it and just even reading the little Wikipedia description, it, you know, could be described as sort of like a Agatha Christie light mystery. Definitely would be interested in revisiting that one as well. It came out, you know, all the way back in 1978, so pretty old, but I'm sure pretty still stands up. Talking about mysteries, we got the classic Nancy Drew. So there's been a bunch of iterations of the Nancy Drew series. Obviously, there was the original Carol Keene. That's her name, right? Carol B. Coon. Oh shit, guys, I really got to do my research. You know, I can remember the titles, but I can only remember so many things. Nancy Drew series. Okay, so I guess there's a TV show that I think I've seen a little bit of ads for, and that's kind of like all that comes up first on Google, which is a little sad because it's an iconic book series that's been around for like ages. Anyways, yes, Carolyn Keene, first published in the 1930s. Nancy Drew mystery stories have sold over 70 million copies. So when I was younger, I mean, definitely remember reading those classics, Secret of the Old Clock and The Hidden Staircase and all that jazz. I remember then there was definitely like a sort of like updated Nancy Drew. I don't know if it was written by Carolyn Keene. It may have been a ghostwriter. And remember reading those, there was kind of just like a her eyes with different colors on the cover. And that was sort of like an early 2000s Nancy Drew light series. So again, just the love of mystery, the plucky female protagonist who really just got herself into a bunch of crazy situations, somehow solved a bunch of mysteries. She's supposed to be like 15, 16, like pretty young, very accomplished. Of course, Scooby-Doo was always a love of mine as well. Unfortunately, not a ton of literature in that universe, but I think it belongs more to the cinematic world. And going along with the Nancy Drew books, a big portion of my childhood nostalgia, sort of literature world memories come back to the Nancy Drew computer games. And I'm going to pause for a second because, man, like I spent so much time, so much money on them. I played them with my dad a lot. They are intricate games. So I think there's about like 30 something. They are still making them. I am still playing them. I played them like 4th, 5th, 6th grade. There's a ton of different ones. There's one where you're, Secret of Wolf Icicle Creek. You go to different places. You play as Nancy. It's a linear adventure game. I will say they are extremely challenging. There's a linear plot. You talk to characters. There's sort of, there's an overarching story, but there's a lot of mini games within the game, and they are freaking hard. Like, I had to and still have to use walkthroughs. If you're unfamiliar, a walkthrough is basically a printed, or now you can look at it on your phone, but it's a how-to guide on how to play the game. The game gives you hints. You can walk around, but it is incredibly hard, especially a lot of those puzzles. You can just spend hours and hours cursing yourself for not knowing the answer, or you could cheat. And yeah, you could cheat and, find out the answer, not do it, but it's really, again, it's about the story. It's about the story, guys. The character, it was more about, like the whodunit and the mystery aspect, and the little mini games were kind of just an annoyance on the way there. Probably why I would never make a good detective, because all the little things that you have to do to actually solve the mystery and get to it are not fun, and they are not easy. Usually they're not. Also, like, how to make a sandwich if you are in England and you have to solve everyone's orders. So I played those for a long time, and then recently, within the past 6 months, maybe, where are we, June, 6 to 8 months, rediscovered them through the gaming universe that my boyfriend lives in. And they are still just as fun. They are immersive. I still have to cheat, but that doesn't make them any less fun. They are still going. I have a couple left that I still have to play. One of them is going to take me to Greece, so that'll be a fun little vacay. If only. So Nancy Drew, she stuck with me. She's still with me. I see her in a lot of contemporary detective and literary novels that I read. And if anybody who writes one of those is saying that they are not influenced by Nancy Drew and or did not read her, then they are a liar. And so next, what about nostalgia? We have Lemony Snickets, A Series of Unfortunate Events. I'm such a fan that I got a little symbol, if you can see this, tattooed on my ankle. For those of you listening to this, the little tattoo is the symbol VFD, which is a secret society in the book. They are written for children, not even really young adult, like middle-aged readers, but they are fantastically written. They are worldly, they are captivating, they are pessimistic and dark, but still light in a way, and they have a fantastic villain in the form of Count Olaf. I mean, the 3 Baudelaire triplets have some of the worst luck ever, but somehow managed to get through it, and you just are like, they're formulaic to a sense, especially the first half of the book, where it was kind of 3 triplets, God, hey, I had coffee, but I'm a little bit, bear with me, it's worth it. So there was 3 siblings, the Baudelaire siblings, whose parents died in a fire and who keep getting shuffled around, and their guardians, unfortunately, continue to just meet some terrible fate. Count Olaf's trying to steal their fortune. The second half of the series deals with this secret VFD society and sort of the larger world of kind of like who's watching you, who's there, what's a performance. The settings were always killer. When I was younger, I had the idea we had lockers in 4th grade. That was the first time we got lockers. And I was so excited, and I figured, all the times that I'm going to open my locker door, I might be bored. Like maybe I'm going to want something to read. Oh, maybe I should type up the first chapter of one of the series of Unfortunate Events books to put up in my locker, just in case I get a little bit bored or want something to read. Upon starting to do that, which, in case you're wondering, did not go well, I kind of gave up. I then thought about photocopying it. I can't remember if it actually came through or not. Either way, I was super into decorating my locker, like locker shelves, locker mirrors, locker magnets. That was a fun time in my life. And then rounding off this sort of nostalgia trip down memory lane, getting a little bit older, we have another classic, the Click series by Lacey Harrison. Oh boy, man. I learned a lot about designer brands, the luxury life through these novels. They focus on, of course, a clique of young girls. I think they're in 7th or 8th grade. They live in Westchester, New York. Massey Block is their queen. There's Dylan, the tomboy. There's Kristen, something with a K, who's like the tomboy. And then there's the new girl, Claire, who comes into Massey's life. And this is just kind of your classic sort of like Mean Girls light. I think it definitely came out before Mean Girls, but there was all those series around that time that were amazing. I mean, there was Gossip Girl, The A-List. Those are the 2 prominent ones that come to mind, but there was so many knockoffs. But The Click, they had these like tartan covers, and every time a new one came out, those little models on the cover that were supposed to be the girls, but you could never really like tell which one was which. They were easy reads. They were light reads. I was certainly not popular and or living a life of designer goods, so I lived vicariously through them in this world that I knew I could never really be a part of. But it was so fun, and it was a bit ridiculous. I mean, the girls and their relationships with the boys, I was like, I want to kiss a boy in 7th grade. That didn't happen. Then there was, I believe, a straight to video or DVD version of the film, which definitely not good by any means, but as it was the only visual representation of the books I had loved for so long, I clung to it. I loved it. There was a couple of great original tunes like Find My Way that were in that. We'll link it down below if you want to listen to that banger as a throwback. So those are just some of the books and series that have made me who I am today, have shaped my foundation of the world at the time, clearly have stuck with me long enough that I can still remember most, if not all, of the details. Whether or not they had a great adaptation, Back to a Series of Unfortunate Events, definitely was disappointed by that Jim Carrey movie that came out in like 2005 or 2006. But recently on Netflix, there has been a series. I think it ended because they covered all the books. And at that point, I mean, they already went a little bit beyond it. It worked, but to do anything beyond the scope of the series, I think would be a grave injustice. But that series with Neil Patrick Harris as Count Olaf was really good. Like, definitely reinvigorated my love of the books, and another series that I want to go back to checking out whenever I get the time. So I would love to know kind of what are the books that shaped you? What are some of the series that you remember? I know for me, pretty much all of the books that I mentioned, I read multiple times just because when I was younger, that was something that I did. I don't know why I don't really reread books now. I think it's just because there's so many different options. And even though I do read about a book a day, like I still have to be slightly judicious in what I'm reading just because time is valuable. So, yeah, I'd just love to know what books you remember, what books kind of you can see also glimpses, and if you are a reader, in what you're reading today, and kind of thinking about how those books shaped you on your literary journey. So that was a blast from the past. Now we're going to get to this week's top 5 books that I read. All right, so the first one is called Pizza Girl by Kyoung Frazier. And if this book were a movie, I feel like it would be directed by Amy Heckerling or Cameron Crowe, sort of one of those slice, no pun intended, of life. We start with the nameless pizza girl. She is 18. She is knocked up. She's working at a pizza place, and her life is kind of shit, honestly. It's not great. She's not doing a lot of things. She's pregnant. Her relationship with the baby daddy is happening, but it's a big part of the novel is her unhappiness and sort of, she definitely wants to have this baby, but the implications of how it ties her to, I think his name is Billy, she struggles with that. And so one day she is dropping off a special custom pickle pizza at a woman's house, and this woman has a child. She lives in a mansion. She kind of has her stuff together, and she sparks something in Pizza Girl. And then the rest of the novel follows their relationship, mostly from the side of Pizza Girl. And I won't give away too much, but it's really just, it's about two women, mostly Pizza Girl, and her relationship to self and other, sort of everyday Los Angeles desert town. She's very relatable. It's something, an unhappiness that I certainly recognized when I was that age, was not pregnant, but definitely felt sort of that malaise and longing for, I feel like I know who I am, but there's so much more that I want to know. It was relatively short, under 300 pages for sure. Fast-paced, even though not a ton happens. It's definitely more of a, like I said, slice of life every day. But I find the beauty in those things, and so does Miss Frazier. So next, we have Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. Permanent Record is about Pablo Neruda, not the poet, just a boy named Pablo Neruda. He works at a bodega in New York City. I think it's New York City. And his life changes when he crosses paths with Lee, who is a superstar. What I really liked about this is, on paper, it based on what I kind of just described, can read like a love story, and the relationship is part of it. But what's really, Pablo is a really just layered, nuanced character. Most young adult novels, with the boy and the girl, the girl is really, she's more of a symbol than anything. Pablo is really the fleshed out one. He was in college. He's back at the bodega kind of trying to figure out what he wants with his life. The way he approaches the relationship is quite fascinating. He hides it from pretty much everybody else in his life, to an extent, and he grapples with sort of like who he wants to be and who he's projecting himself to be versus who he really is, and his lack of ambition. And just I really was immediately sucked in. Again, I read this one in a day. Mary H.K. Choi has also written another novel called, what's it called? Permanent Record, and I don't remember. I'm sorry, guys. But her style is very just, it's kind of like a Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist type vibe, if that makes sense, of just, the love story is more, it's there to enhance the character, and it's just part of their journey. It's not their entire journey. And I don't think it's not so much young adult. Younger readers could enjoy it for sure, but I think any adult, really, it's definitely attainable and written, it's not written in the traditional young adult sort of like, this is the plot and everything happens. It really just is immersive and well written enough that I think anybody who's even hesitant to the idea of a young adult would find it interesting. So next we have Buy Yourself the fucking Lilies and Other Rituals to Fix Your Life from Someone Who's Been There by Tara Schuster. So it sounds like a self-help book, and in a way it kind of is, but it's not. It's a memoir. Again, it's one of I think we've talked about this before, but it's sort of a memoir, but it's also sort of a, here is my story and here's what I learned from it and here's what I want you to take from it. So it has those memoir aspects, but it also has this sort of like direct to audience, like here's what I really want you to take from it. Tara Schuster, when she was 25, was addicted to marijuana, Been there. Waking up in her bed, not knowing what's going on, drunk, ambitionless, sound a lot like anybody else I know. I'm just kidding, not me. I have ambitions. I'm doing this podcast. She just needs to take a hard look at her life, reset everything. She actually is the executive producer of Key and Peele. She works at Comedy Central now and worked her way up there. She has very small little tips that make a difference, talking about at her internship on the Jon Stewart show. The one thing that she really took notice of was that the espresso machine was always broken whenever John wanted his iced coffee or whatever. So she took a lot of extra care to make sure that that was always working, and that was noticed, and that really got her foot in the door. Or little things like where there's a chapter about her hiking Temescal Canyon, which apparently is in Pacific Palisades. Sounds like a beautiful hike. I want to check it out. She saw Angelica Houston one day as she was hiking, and that kind of was like a beacon and an angel to her. So it's very relatable, LA, slightly older, which I always appreciate. Not to diss anybody in their 20s, but obviously there's that experience and sort of I was where you are, but now here's where I am, and we all take different paths, but it wasn't easy to get here, and here's how I made my path. Here's how you can maybe forge your path. And as the title states, buy yourself the fucking lilies. If you're going to Trader Joe's and you see some lilies and you want them, just fucking grab them. I mean, they're $7. And I know that, for some people, $7 is a lot of money, but it's more, maybe it's you're going to the dollar store and you're not sure if you should buy that like $1 soda or whatever. It's like, buy yourself the little things. Like, don't worry about that. Maybe don't go out and buy hundreds of dollars of Free People merchandise, clothes, every week. But, every week if you're at the grocery store and you see those ice cream sandwiches that you want that are just like a couple dollars out of your budget, buy them, because like you'll feel happy. And don't worry about it too. Don't beat yourself up about, oh, should I buy them? Should I not buy them? It's just a few more dollars. That's what I really took from this. Not that I ever don't treat myself or whatever, but I live within my means, but I don't feel bad if I want to buy a cute jumpsuit that I don't really need because I have other jumpsuits, but like I can afford it. It was on sale. Not sponsored, from Banana Republic. Well, that'd be cool. And I don't regret instead thinking, oh, I spent this much money on this jumpsuit and should I have bought it? It's just like, no, it's a cool jumpsuit. I'm going to wear it and I'm going to enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, then it wasn't even really worth the money. So that is that book. Now we're coming to our best book of the week. Folks, again, we have some more technical difficulties. We are learning. We are going with the flow. Anyways, in the Dream House. So I was familiar with this author. She wrote a wonderful book of short stories called Her Body and Other Parties. In the Dream House is a memoir about her experience in an abusive relationship, and not just any abusive relationship, but an abusive queer relationship. And as she acknowledges in this book or this memoir, there really are not any resources for people or women or men who are in abusive queer relationships, particularly queer lesbian relationships. She stresses throughout the novel that it's already, lesbians and queer women have such a hard time in the public sphere and in their space that to even acknowledge abuse or to, align them with a more heteronormative type of situation, domestic violence, it, tarnishes the lesbian name, and no one wants to think about that. And people only talk about it behind closed doors, and there really aren't many stories or resources about it. So it's this is the darkest read of the list by far. It's really written in a unique format. Every chapter is Dream House as whatever. And so sometimes her dream house, where she lived with this abusive girlfriend, is, recounting the unfortunate situations that happened with her. And then sometimes the pages explore more larger issues relating to domestic abuse and queer relationships. Particularly, my favorite little bit analyzed the music video for the song Voices Carry by Till Tuesday, a wonderful 80s jam, which I just kind of always thought was a fun song. And then reading this book, I was like, oh, okay, actually the song is about a woman who's in an abusive relationship. And even though it's a heteronormative relationship in the music video, which I then watched, and which Machado kind of dissects, it's it's empowering in a way. It relates to her experience and just the way that she ties in little bits of pop culture to bring a little bit of lightness to this definitely dark subject. Made it the best book that I read this week, and definitely in a long time. It was an interesting format of doing a memoir, especially with such a sensitive topic. And she doesn't hold back. She writes in a beautiful sort of from the heart way, but she's a good writer. So it's structured well, and it's a good one. And then lastly, we have Unspeakable Things by Jess Lourey. This novel is based off of the Jacob Wetterling story. Jacob was a young boy who went missing in the South in around the 80s. Not even this, I don't want to say Mississippi, I don't know, somewhere. They actually just recently in the past few years found his remains, but he went missing at a time when a lot of young boys were going missing or being abused, and no one really kind of cared or didn't think about it. But then all of a sudden it was like, oh, we have it took them a while. And so this is it's fiction, but it's inspired by that story, written from the perspective of a young girl who is living her life, going to middle school, is experiencing life as these murders and as these kidnappings are taking place. It starts with a young boy in her community being abused. We also see her own abuse via her father. We see kind of how the sheriff is corrupt. We see all the little things about a small town that can lead to letting these situations happen. A friend of hers goes missing. It is a murder mystery, but it's also like small town girl coming of age. It's written for adults. It's definitely not a young adult novel, but written again from the perspective of a young girl who has to witness all these terrible things and grow up a lot faster than she should. There is also that element of there are multiple suspects to the boy's murder, but also how we can interpret people and interpret their motives in different ways just based on how society is telling us we should. It was, I guess it's dark. There's murder and child abuse, and yes, but it's definitely not the same darkness of In the Dream House. It's based on a true story, but it's fiction. And it's one of those, it's kind of just, murder mystery, but coming of age, small town, good book. I'm running out of words to describe things. So great for being on a podcast, right? Anyways, so that leads us to the end of this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you made it this far, make sure you follow me on Goodreads. So the link will be down below. That way you can see what I am reading in real time. And that connects to my Kindle, which is how I read everything. So you can see my ratings. You can see all the books I have read and talked about. You can explore. If you enjoyed one of these books and it sounds great, you can check out other things by the author. And also let me know what you're reading. Let me know what suggestions you got, because I'm always down for a good read. So until then, keep reading. Bye.